Welcome, biologists, to our last part of our ecology unit, and this is where we look at the impact we people have on ecosystems around the planet. And so the first thing we'll discuss is a concept that's actually brought forward from your text. The tragedy of the commons, and it's this idea that areas used by everyone, oceans, for example, kind of are no one's particular responsibility and can lead to them not being taken care of by anyone, which leads to resources being lost to everyone. So the story of modern humans is kind of trying to not let that happen, only we haven't been doing a real great job of it so far, but things are better than they once were. So what we need to do is talk about resources that are available from the natural environment, from ecosystems, and the impacts those resources, using those resources have on living things, and how we manage that. So some basic vocabulary. Renewable resources then are simply resources, that can regenerate. They are often from living things, or they at least cycle through living things through biogeochemical processes like water, various nutrients, trees, things like that. Wind, sun, all of these are renewable resources, things that as long as we manage them properly, we won't run out of it. Which brings us to this slide. Please be aware that just because a resource is renewable, it can be used over and over again, it does not necessarily mean it is unlimited. For example, fresh water is a renewable resource, okay? But certainly this water does not look so great, okay? There are events that can make it limited. For example, if it gets too polluted in an area, or if the climate changes and all of a sudden we have a drought in an area, then water is not the renewable resource it once was. Now, classic non-renewable resources are those resources that can't be replaced. Metals, this image of coal, many railroad cars of coal, fossil fuels are not renewable. Now, if you'll remember from the carbon cycle we talked about, coal is actually made from ancient plant material that got squeezed by the pressure, buried under the earth and formed into what we would recognize as coal. So you might argue, well, that's renewable. It was made from living things. But again, the key here is that it took millions of years to make that coal. And so that's really not renewable for most humans if you got to wait around millions of years to renew it. Now, a tree population, renewable or non-renewable? Okay, it kind of depends on what you're talking about. Certainly, individual trees are definitely renewable. We can cut down a tree, plant a new tree, definitely. But if you clear cut an entire forest, then you may permanently alter the ecosystem in such a way that those trees and the things that lived among those trees are gone forever. Even if you plant a new forest, it may be that the things that relied on that particular mix of trees in that forest are gone. So if you clear cut things, sometimes it's really hard to get back what you had. But if you do one tree at a time, you're probably in pretty good shape. So that brings us to a discussion of something called sustainable development. And all that means is using resources without using them up, without depleting them, providing for the needs of people, while also recognizing that the environment is not just a bottomless pit of stuff for us to use and use and use. So you've got to take into account how ecosystems work, and also, of course, what humans need to survive and flourish. Okay. So, strategies in sustainable development might be something like using insects to control unwanted pests in a field as opposed to using this pesticide that's being sprayed on this field. So, you can use natural controls on pests instead of some chemical that might run off and get into the environment. Now, sometimes even this is a little tricky, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So we're going to go through land resources and then we'll stop with this podcast. Land resources. The first one we'll talk about is soil. Now, we don't often think of soil in terms of being a resource. It's dirt. But without it, we'd be in pretty poor shape, as they found out in the Dust Bowl. So is soil renewable or not? It is completely renewable if it is managed properly, okay? And obviously, mismanagement of soil resources can result into some devastating effects. If land is mismanaged, clear cut, whatever, you lose the roots that hold the soil in place. The next thing you know, the rain comes and washes the soil into nearby creeks and rivers. And not only do you not have your nutrient-rich soil anymore, but you also made a big mess of the creeks and the rivers. So it's really important to maintain plant systems in the soil to hold it in place, and you continue to have a rich soil for growth. Desertification is another result of misuse of soil. If you have had a productive area, you grow crops in an area and you keep growing them and all of a sudden you've lost all your nutrient, nothing will grow. The next thing you know, you have conditions that could lead to a Dust Bowl type of environment where you have just a desert because nothing will grow there because there's no nutrient left. So desertification is a very devastating result of mismanagement of soil. All right, another land resource are forest resources. So, of course, forest resources are really important to people. We use them for building. People use wood for fuel, for fires, and so on. So, obviously, really important. Now, there are other things, however, that are a little less tangible than lumber and wood for fires that forests do for us. And these are called ecological services. Of course, one of the most important ecological services is forests contribute to being lungs of the earth. They absorb carbon dioxide, which is really important in our environment today, and they, of course, also release oxygen to breathe. Of course, we know that oceans also do this for us, even more so than the trees, but the trees obviously are important as well. Forests store nutrients for us in the plants and in the soil that the plants are holding in place. They provide habitats and food for many organisms that are also important to humans. They help to moderate the climate for us. And we already mentioned they limit soil erosion, and this helps to protect fresh water supplies by absorbing materials that might be harmful to lakes, streams, and so on. The plants hold the soil in place, and not only that, they absorb materials that might go washing down into bodies of water. So these are all less tangible but extremely important things that forests do for all of us. Okay? So, as we've already talked about, are forests renewable resources? Maybe. It depends on the forest and it depends on how you do it. Our temperate deciduous forests seem like they really do come back pretty well after we've cut them. Everything around us is probably the result of secondary succession. Someone has cut down the deciduous forest before for farming or whatever, and it's allowed to grow back, and we have nice woods today. However, there are some forests that are absolutely not renewable, at least not in the state in which we currently enjoy them. Old growth forests, found still in the Pacific Northwest and so on. are made up of truly ancient trees and ancient ecosystems. And if you go in and cut that down, it's not going to be replaced by a similar ecosystem. The succession of those ecosystems has gone on for thousands of years. If we chop down those trees, the plants and animals that are dependent, on those trees would die. And even if we tried to let the trees grow back, those animals that depended on those trees are not going to come back. They're very specific to those ancient ecosystems that are nowhere else in the world. So again, some forests are renewable, some are definitely not. And there's a beautiful picture of an old growth forest. Now, deforestation. I'm sure you all know what that is, the loss of forests, which also, as we've already mentioned, can lead to soil erosion, nutrients washing out from the soil, and if you, as is often done in slash and burn type of environments where people cut down the trees and then farm a place or allow grazing of cattle and so on. If you do that after you deforest a place, it really can cause permanent change to the soil that will not allow trees to grow back in that place. So deforestation can be pretty devastating. All right. That's the end of our talk on land resources. We're getting ready to get into some water resources real quick, so we'll stop there. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a lovely, lovely time. Until I see you again, take care.